Hello, everybody, and welcome into our first, if you're watching this is the first one we're recording, but our first playoff preview show here on the YouTube channel. We've done this for the last, I think, 2, 3 seasons now, and we're right into the playoffs here. We're going to start with the New York Rangers and the Washington Capitals, which was just finalized yesterday as we're recording this, because the Capitals just made it in on an empty net goal against the Flyers, eliminating a bunch of teams by doing that, and they make it in. So I've got a couple writers there, the hockey writers, Jacob Billington, Jim Bay. Jim Bay is going to step in for the Rangers, and we got Jacob covering the Capitals on this video. So welcome, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No, thanks for having me. Yes, always fun to talk about hockey, especially the playoffs.
Yes, for sure. I know, Jacob, your Senators are not in the playoffs, but Jim, you got Lightning back in, and we'll probably have you on for the Lightning preview show. But let's get started with this series. And this pits the President's Trophy winners, New York Rangers, against the last place team. This is probably the purest 1 versus 8 matchup. Capitals have a ridiculously bad goal differential. If you look at their numbers, they probably shouldn't be in the playoffs, but here they are. You never know with a team like this. So let's go over a bit just as a primer here. The Capitals and the Rangers, even season series, 2-2. I mean, there was no you'd think that this is a 1 versus 8, but it was a tie season series. Charlie Lindgren was in for 3 of the games, and he was really good. Kemper only got into 1 game, and Lindgren had a shutout. His save 1.35 goals against average, 955 save percentage in the 3 games. So I'm assuming he is going to be the starter in this series, and I know he was down the stretch too. So, and of course, Igor Shesterkin started 3 of those games as well. So you're thinking it's going to be Lindgren, Shesterkin in this series. As for who led in players, Anthony Mantha was the only one, but he's not even on the Capitals anymore. Ovechkin didn't score in the season series. He only played 2 of the games too, so he wasn't really prominent. Even for the Rangers, no one really stood out in the season series as being dominant. So looking at this on paper, they look pretty evenly matched on how they've played together against each other during the season. So really, it's even, but on paper for the players, it's not. So let's start with some players to watch as we're actually before we get there. I'll start with you, Jacob, with the Capitals. Like I said, it's a 1 versus 8. They look like they're going to get blown out 4-0. Is that how you see it? Looking at how they've played throughout the season, and is this going to be an easy series for the Rangers, or will they put up a fight?
They've had some pretty good highs. They've had some very low lows. If you look at their stats, Anthony Mantha led the team in plus minus at +5, and he hasn't been on the team in a month and a half. So, like, their lows were very low, and like they finished the season with what was it, a -37 goal differential, just absolutely abysmal. But they've had some really good streaks, especially in the last 2 months. They've done really well. I'd like to see the splits. I probably should have looked that up, but I'd like to see the split between from February 1st until the end of the season, see how they were, see how the team performed, because I think that they had some really good stretches down the last bit of the season, but they didn't have any superstars this season. They didn't have any they hardly had any depth scoring. I mean, they only had 3 players with more than 35 points this season, which is incredible that this kind of team makes the playoffs. But like you mentioned, Charlie Lindgren's played really good hockey, so let's see what he can do in the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I think he was starting a lot of the games towards the end, so he's pretty much their starter. He's taken over Darcy Kemper's job. And looking at how he played against the Rangers throughout the season, you'd probably go with him because he pretty much dominated. Over to you, Jim. What do you think about the Rangers this season? I mean, obviously won President's Trophy. I had their best regular season in a long time, franchise record, I believe,
Yep.
for how many wins they got. So what do you see this series playing out? Is it that it's going to be a dominant series for them, or are they going to have some issues with Washington?
I think you're going to have some issues with Washington. I mean, you got Alex Ovechkin on the other side. That's just going to be he can still at his age do so much for that team. He's a guy who could put him in pick him up and put him on his back and carry him to some wins and even possibly a series victory. I don't see that happening. As Jacob pointed out, they have some depth issues and stuff, and I think when you get into the playoffs, that's the big key. The Rangers, on the other hand, have, when they've done well, they started out really good. And then they had a couple of months where they were but then, they're like 26, 8-1 over their last 35 games. They're doing what you want a playoff team to do, which is trending in the right direction, not just kind of going like, yeah, we're going to play 500 all the way through and whatever. They're actually playing, really, really well. So, that should give them, and their fans a lot of confidence going into this series that they should, not easily, but they should be able to handle the Capitals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like I say, on paper, it looks like a pretty easy series for them. But when playoffs start, it goes to zero. And it doesn't matter who won how many games during the season, who dominated, it resets. So, and we've seen that many times. Bruins got kicked in the first round, and they had an NHL record season last year. So anything can happen. All right, let's move to some players to watch. Now, I'll start with you, Jim. Obviously all the top guys, Artemi Panarin had a ridiculous season, over 100 points. All their main guys did it. Is that who you'll be watching, their stars, or some of their depth guys are going to have to kind of step up?
Well, the Panarin line, those trio of guys that he's played with for most of the Trocheck and Lafreniere, I think they're among, if not the top scoring trio in the NHL. So they certainly have that. And you certainly got to watch them. You really, want them to continue that. The guys I'm going to watch, especially the two, have kind of had a mixed season, and that's the top line, Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider. They've been good, but they've had a lot of ups and downs. And I'm going to wait to see, Kreider is usually like great in the playoffs. So that'll be, something to watch for. There'll be a few other things. Their depth pieces are good. What you want them to do is keep you in the game. You don't want them to do things to, put this, going on the penalty kill too much or doing different things like that, too many turnovers, all of that stuff. And I think those groups are going to be fine. Their defense is solid. Jacob Trouba, Adam Fox, Keandre Miller, just a really solid group. So, their depth, I think, for the keys to watch are going to be the keys in beating the Capitals. Mm-hmm. And how well they play is how easy they're going to make it.
For sure. They are definitely a way deeper team than the Capitals. So we'll speak on that, Jacob. What do you think with the Capitals? I mean, Alex Ovechkin, still their headliner. He really he wasn't really that good at the beginning of the season. I thought, oh no, he's not going to hit 20 goals this season. He was really, but now he's over 30 again, and seems to be on track. Is that who you're watching, or are you going to be watching some other pieces that are going to have to step up if they have any chance against the Rangers?
Yeah, Ovechkin did not have a good start to the season, but his last 30 games have been absolutely dynamite. I look to see him continue that into the playoffs, and I think that he will. He's always done pretty well in the playoffs, but two names I'm going to keep an eye on is Dylan Strome, who led the team in points this year with 67 and 82 games. He's had a fantastic year, and he's fitting very well in Washington. And doing great things with Ovechkin. Another player I'm going to watch is Connor McMichael. Pretty young guy, but he's going to be a really important part of this team and of how they're going to be successful. He did finish fifth on the team in points. Mantha finished fifth, but he's not there anymore, so he finished sixth. And mind you, that's only 33 points. That's not incredible, but he just provides some really good depth, and I think that his game could elevate in the playoffs as well. I think that there's a lot to like about what Connor McMichael can bring, and I mean, he almost scored 20 goals this season, and Washington fans have started to get a little bit impatient waiting for him, but he's here. He's here and he's ready to play, and I think that he's going to do really well. Another player I do want to throw in there is Alexi Protas.
Mhm.
I always want to say Poitras from the Bruins, but Protas, he's done really well in the bottom six. He's been a pretty important part of how they play, and of course you got guys like TJ Oshie, Nick Dowd, and these guys that are gonna really help just be hard to play against, and that's kind of what Washington's gonna need.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, they've definitely got some playoff experience. I mean, Ovechkin's won a cup. John Carlson, he's the leader back there on the back end. He still can make a difference. And I think the biggest thing in this series is going to be the goaltending. And if Lindgren can play the same as he's been in the regular season, you know what? Rangers may have some problems. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. So on that, keys to victory. Jacob, what do the Capitals have to do to make the upset and kick off another President's Trophy winner?
So when I looked at that question, yes, goaltending came to mind, but with how kind of steady it's been, it's not really one of the things that really needs to be a huge standout. For me, it's depth scoring, and I don't just mean the bottom six, because their bottom six is pretty good, but they just have some bottom sixers in the top six. Like, it's just from the top to the bottom. So I guess actually I would rephrase it to high end scoring. They just haven't had any of that, and they need some players to score more than just a handful of points. They're going to need more than what they got in the regular season, and I wouldn't be surprised if they got it. Like, you do look at these guys that they have, like I mentioned, TJ Oshie, Connor McMichael, Tom Wilson. I wouldn't be surprised to see them score a point a game in the first round. Maybe not throughout a whole playoff run, but in the first round, I wouldn't be surprised to see them pop off and get 6-7 points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I say, they do have some veterans as well that know how to play in the playoffs. Tom Wilson is definitely a guy that can do that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if their depth can actually come, because they're going to need it against the Rangers for sure.
And it'll be interesting to see how Max Pacioretty comes, because
Right.
he only played 47 games this season. People kind of forget that he's even playing. Like, he's had a really quiet season, only 23 points on the season. So he didn't have a huge season, but again, he missed a lot of time over the past year and a half.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really interesting to see how he can do in the playoffs, because like he's shown that he can be good in the playoffs. He's also shown to be a little bit quiet sometimes. So we're going to see what version of Max Pacioretty we get this year, and if he can elevate himself in the playoffs, then he's going to be a huge contributor on this team.
For sure. All right, Jim, how are the Rangers going to avoid an upset? Because, I mean, the President's Trophy winners haven't really fared very well over the last few years. So how are they going to beat that curse?
Well, the first thing you have to do in this and every other series is play Ranger hockey, which is, very structured. They have a ton of talent. They have great goaltending. If they do that, they have a really good shot to, get rid of that President's Trophy jinx curse or whatever you want to call it. The other thing they need to do is to not let Tom Wilson get in their heads, which he does so well. And it's easy to say not to do it and you shouldn't do it, but he's good at it. And one of the things that the Rangers sometimes have issues with are taking penalties. So, the ability to do something like that, there is a lot of, I don't know if it's bad blood, but they have a lot of history from regular season, different things. And the New York media is already kind of picking that up. There was already the story from 2 years ago when Wilson cross-checked Artemi Panarin, who didn't have his helmet on. And all the league did was fine him $5,000, and the Rangers lost their mind and called out the director of player safety. If you don't, know this or remember this, if you're not like particularly a Rangers fan, it's a big thing. So they're bringing that back up, and that's the New York distractions that don't happen in a lot of other markets are very big here. So shutting all of that out, not letting Wilson get in their heads. Ovechkin's going to do Ovechkin stuff. He's going to get some goals. He's going to do some things, but, again, eliminating, not letting their depth pieces do anything to help them out, and then playing the Ranger hockey and Shesterkin being Shesterkin, and the great thing about that is Quick had a good year too. If an injury happens, if for some reason they need a little change of pace, a spark, they can bring Quick in, to, hold down the fort until, they can turn things around. So, there's a lot of upsides for them, but there's still a few, pitfalls they need to avoid to, get upset in this series.
For sure. I mean, you moved into our next question, and Jacob, but what could the Capitals' Achilles heel be in this series that you're kind of worried that could potentially make it an easy one for the Rangers to win?
I kind of contradict myself with this based on the last thing that I said, but I'm going to say the goaltending. I do think that, I mean, you see Aiden Hill won the Stanley Cup last year with Vegas, but you don't see these backup level goalies do these magical runs all the time. And Charlie Lindgren's had a fantastic season. You kind of look at how Connor Ingram did in Arizona this year. He did absolutely fantastic, and then he just kind of fell off. And I'm a little bit worried that could happen with Charlie Lindgren. But he's been so consistent over the whole season. I mean, he played 50 games this season, and he finished with, I believe, a 9-11 save percentage. Like that's pretty solid, especially in a year with such high scoring. And so I do worry that he might not be the guy in the playoffs, and I trust him more than Darcy Kemper. And so if something happens with Lindgren, then I'm not sure that Kemper can be another option.
I mean, he's won a cup. He was also really, I mean, he was average though. He wasn't the reason the Avalanche won the cup. He was solid. He was good. So, I mean, and the Avalanche definitely a different team than the Capitals, 100%. They're more like the Rangers. Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how the goaltending kind of plays out. All right, Jim, is that the weakness you're worried about? Is that Tom Wilson could potentially get in their heads and maybe draw some penalties and they get in trouble that way, kind of throw them off their game?
Yeah, if any of the weaknesses that the Rangers had, their stats for everything else has been at the top of the league. In penalty minutes, they were kind of middling, and they have a tendency every once in a while to lose their temper and lose their focus. And against in the playoffs and against the master of doing that, Tom Wilson, and Ovechkin's pretty good too.
Yeah.
Anybody will tell you he's one of the best trash talkers in the league. So they have to stay out of the thing, and that will bring the other piece of this in. We'll jump into like the X factors. For the Rangers, they've got this guy named Matt Remke who has a tendency to like to get in some scuffles. Now, generally they say, well, they don't fight in the playoffs. That's not entirely true anymore, but he's also a very young player. Laviolette's been quoted as saying a lot of good things about putting him in there and, being able to handle the big moment. I want to see that. I want to see it on the ice, with a puck. And I also want to see it without a puck, because he's going to have to, at this point, take the discipline not to get goaded into things that are going to put, the Rangers, on the penalty kill so often, and some other players too. But Rimke's kind of the new kid on the block, the unknown factor. So that'll be real interesting to see. And that's kind of one of their big. They also have a tendency to kind of sometimes, the thing to worry about is they get out of what they do. All of a sudden you're looking like, trying to do too much. Is the pressure going to do? They don't have to press. They just have to play Ranger hockey. I mean, they're just so good and so talented up and down the line. Play your game. Like, Herb Brooks, play your game. You got to play your game. And if they get out of that, then, that could spell a little bit of trouble.
Yeah. Remke is someone to really watch, because he could get into the trouble, especially if Tom Wilson gets under his skin and he starts kind of just running around, and that could be a problem. So, I mean, he probably won't be playing it then. I'd be like, no, you're sitting. Yeah. We don't need you in the lineup. So that's going to be an interesting one for sure. Jacob, what about you for X factors? Is there an X factor that could potentially turn the tide in this series? It could be a player, could be a situation. What do you got?
I mean, Ovechkin obviously is the X factor. That's a little bit of a cop-out of an answer. So I'm going to go with Tom Wilson for all the reasons that Jim just mentioned. He can take over a series and not even score a single point. It's just him being Tom Wilson is going to, how effective he is in being himself is going to dictate how the series goes. And he has the power to take New York off their game. They might not be able to play their game if Tom Wilson is being Tom Wilson, because that's what he does, and that's what he's really good at. Like you mentioned, Jim, that was a fantastic kind of description of what he does. And again, I was going to mention that with Matt Rempe. If he gets under the skin of Matt Rempe and gets him to maybe take a major or a couple extra minors or whatever it's going to be, I do think that I do think that Tom Wilson can be the biggest game changer in this series.
Yeah, I mean, he's the prototypical playoff guy that, I mean, it could go either way too. Like he could be the Rempe as well, right? He's had those problems too. So we'll see which version of Tom Wilson that the Capitals get. They need the guy that does what you guys both described. So he's definitely capable. All right, moving to series MVPs. Now, some of these could be easy ones. I mean, a lot of these stars usually come to play, but it could also be a third or fourth liner. Jacob, who's your series MVP? And you could pick between the two teams who you think is going to be the biggest star in this series.
This is tough. I mean, I think if Washington wins, it's going to be Charlie Lindgren. It's going to have to be. But I think, a little spoiler for our predictions, but I think the Rangers going to win, and I think that it's going to have to be Panarin or Adam Fox. I think I might go with Fox. Just because Panarin's the superstar that everybody knows and everybody's watching this year. I'm going to go with Fox. He very, very dynamic. He's one of the best defensemen in the NHL. People kind of haven't talked about him too much this year, even though he's had an incredible year. Just maybe not to his standards. It's not one of his best, but I think that he is going to be quietly one of the best players in the whole playoffs this year if the Rangers go on a run.
Yeah, well, he's again Norris Trophy winner. He's he's definitely capable of being that. So we'll see what he does. Jim, who's your series MVP? I mean, like I say, it could be either team.
Yeah, I'm gonna I believe the Rangers are going to win, so I'm going to go. What I know, it probably sounds kind of chalky, but you got to go with Igor Shesterkin because if they're going to win, he's got to play his game. He had a rough patch, in the middle part of the year. There's always that kind of little doubt in the back of your head, going like, was that just was something going on? What was going on? But it looks like he's, righted the ship. He's playing, like we all, know Igor can. And I definitely think he's going to, really make his presence felt. I don't see, probably now they'll come out and be 7-6 the first game, but I don't see, the Capitals, scoring too much. We're talking about the goalies and, saying low scoring, then you come out and they, put up big numbers, but I think it'll be the MVP will be in this series. It'll be Shesterkin.
Yeah, it probably will happen that way. 5-4 game or something. Yeah, we'll see. All right, prediction time. Now, I love doing these bold predictions. So Jacob, a bold prediction for this series. It could be for either team if you want.
Jonathan Quick plays at least 2.5 games. That's my bold prediction. I think that, I just think whether it's going to be because of injury, probably not. Shesterkin's been relatively healthy for quite a while. But I'm going to say that Jonathan Quick plays 2.5 games.
All right. Jim, what about you? A bold prediction for this series?
My bold prediction is going to be in the series clinching game for the Rangers. The winning goal is scored by Ryan Lindgren against his brother.
Oh, nice.
My bold prediction.
That's a good one.
Love it. That's great. All right, now you guys both said the Rangers are going to win this series. So let's go with how many games. So how many games will this go? Jacob, we'll start with you.
I'm going to go 7. I don't think it's going to be an easy out. I think that this is a really good matchup for Washington. Like if they're playing a team like Florida, I think they get obliterated. But I don't know what it is, but I'm not 100% sold on the Rangers. I mean, they just won the President's Trophy. They just had a fantastic regular season, but I'm not 100% sold. And not that I think Washington is the best underdog story that there could be, or the best underdog team, but I really like the matchup for Washington compared to other potential candidates for who they could have gone up against. And I do think that it's going to go 7.
All right, Jim, what about you? You think it's going 7 or less than that?
I think it's going to go. Yeah, I think it's going to be in 6. I think Rangers in 6. Again, I think they just have too much firepower, and it actually wouldn't surprise me to see them do it in 5 or even sweep. So we said the Capitals, they've got the talent, but they've also got a lot of gaps, and if the Rangers can exploit that, I think it'll be a quicker series than even what we're saying.
Yeah. I think it's going to go 6 as well. I think the Capitals are going to put up a little bit of a fight, but the Rangers, I think, is just going to they're just too deep, and goaltending can be something. I think Shesterkin's going to be Shesterkin in this series. I think it's going to be a 6, and yeah, I don't like sweeps. I don't like saying sweeps because usually that doesn't happen. It's usually either at least one of the teams win at least one game. They don't like the sweep. So I'm going to say it's 6. I think the Capitals win a couple. All right. Well, thanks, Jacob. Thanks, Jim, for coming on and previewing this series. We'll see who's going to be back for the next one and talking. So they haven't met in the playoffs since 2015. So this is a new series, but we've seen some repeats, and we have some repeats in this playoffs again. But this is a new one. It's been a while since they've met. So a lot of Ovechkin's still here. Oshie's still here. I mean, there's still veterans that have been from those playoffs. But it should be fun. But thanks for coming on, and make sure checking out all of our stuff at hockeyriders.com. We got a bunch of preview episodes in the works. We'll have one for every series. But until our next one, we'll see you on another episode on the Hockey Writers YouTube channel here.